Greetings and salutations. Welcome to Autist Circle Season 2, Episode 4. Anthony van Dyck. I am your host, Bleach Demon, and as always, the man with the knowledge, Dave Total Blackout Painting, and really the true host of this show.
Thank you. I would hardly say I'm the true host, but I I spend some time doing some research. I think that's about the best I can say. Um, but yeah, thanks, Bleach. So today we're talking about Anthony van Dyck. This is episode 24, which is pretty damn good, I think. Even if
Mhm.
we were a little late these last few weeks, I've had some personal issues come up that have really kept me from getting the shit done that I need to do, and so I appreciate you hanging in here with me. But yeah, so today we're talking about Anthony van Dyck, the Dutch. Well, he's Flemish, so if you say Dutch, then the thing screams at you. It's like not Dutch, it's Flemish. Okay, so yeah, he was born in Antwerp, which was part of the Spanish Netherlands, while the King of Spain still controlled that half of the country.
Mhm.
Um, so he is one of the big Dutch masters that we've talked about previously. We've covered Rubens and Jordain, who were both just amazing artists. And so to round out that trio, we're going to talk about Van Dyck here. So first off, we'll start with the timeline. If I have it up, I don't have it up here yet. Let me get the timeline going.
I will have to say it. I greatly appreciate having the timeline. Just it sets everyone in a logical order, but especially when we talk about styles.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Um, yeah, I think it's important to show where this lays off. Here's the real one. Let me get the real one up here. There we go. This one has the death of Pontormo on it, just to show the gap between Pontormo's death and the emergence of the Baroque style, and how much time there was in the Mannerist period before Baroque really became the prominent art style. So, let me read my blurb here. So, Van Dyck sits at an interesting time in art history. He's not the cutting edge of the Baroque movement like Caravaggio, and he's not the titan that was Rubens, but he's one of the most prominent and popular portrait artists of his time, and he's inherited aspects from a few different visual bloodlines. He absorbed Titian's use of brushwork and color from his time in Venice, from Rubens he captured the Flemish Baroque movement and scale, and movement in that movement of the painting and the action in the scenes, um, and the grandeur and the scale and the ability to make a painting feel like a theatrical work. uh, and the political culture taught him that a portrait is not just a likeness, it's a political statement. It's political propaganda and silk stockings, especially in his hands. He was a premier court painter, and while portraiture was nothing new, he elevated it to a new level. He created a template for nobility and the appearance of power and how an aristocrat wants to be seen. He bridges mannerism to the mature Baroque style, and he bridges the Italian traditions with Northern European traditions, and he bridges the high Baroque to the late 18th century portraiture. Van Dyck is one of the defining painters of aristocratic identity in the Baroque age. He transforms portraiture into a supreme instrument of elegance, legitimacy, and social myth. He links Venetian richness, Flemish vitality, and English court culture into a style that shapes European portraiture for centuries after his death. So, from Titian gave him the language of aristocratic beauty, and Rubens gave him Baroque energy. And Van Dyck takes those and turns both of them into the gold standard for court portraiture. And his contemporaries included, obviously, Rubens, Artemisia Gentileschi, and Rembrandt in his later years, and also Jordaens. and many others. So he was really in a crowd of extremely popular, popular and well-known artists. A lot of artists that we know still today, and many we've talked about.
Oh yeah, it's just looking through a little sampling of his portraiture. The man was prolific.
He was. He was an incredibly prolific painter. Well, he was never at a want for work, um, because he was so good. He was very sought after. Um, so much so that he was later appointed. He was actually brought in by the King of England from Antwerp to be a court painter in England. Um, and let's on that we'll just jump into the biography here, and then we'll elucidate that more as soon as I can find my mouse. There we go. All right. So, yeah, let me see. Oh, there we are. Okay, I found my picture. All right. So again, what you were saying with the portrait, this is a self-portrait, and it really is one of the most brilliant and elegant portraits, and portrays him in such a fascinating light. Um, so this is Anthony van Dyck. He was born in 1599 on March 22nd in Antwerp. He was the seventh of 12 children, which is crazy.
Mm.
Um, his father, Franz, was a silk merchant, which afforded him a comfortable childhood. He didn't struggle like many other artists. He lived an aristocratic childhood, not a courtly one, but an aristocratic one. um, so this presages his future as the painter of satin and sheen. His mother, Maria Coopers, was also from a respectable family that had some artistic skill in it. So by age 10, he was apprenticed to Henrik van Balen, who is this image right here. And this is actually a portrait done by Van Dyck of Van Balen. And Van Balen was a very successful painter in Antwerp. And as we mentioned previously, we talked about it. We talked about it through Bruegel I talked about it through Bruegel with Trim. And that's just how prominent Antwerp was in the Northern European art scene. It was the artistic center of Northern Europe for many years, and him being there served to give him a proper professional foundation working under Van Balen. He worked on drawing, workshop discipline, religious painting, and the ins and out of the artistic profession. And so, as opposed to being just a talented child painter or a young painter, he was actually a oh god damn, yeah, Maureen said something right in your. So he was actually the he became an actual professional artist instead of just a talented painter. I mean, it helped him establish himself more than just being a you know, a talented child. By age 16, he was doing independent works. And by age 19, he was inducted as a master into the Antwerp Guild of St. Luke, which I believe we talked about. Which I believe we talked about with Rembrandt, because I believe Rembrandt was also a member of the Antwerp Guild of St. Luke. So, and also at this time, Antwerp was the stomping grounds for Rubens, who really loomed over the art scene. And as we covered during Rubens, he was really a colossal figure in the art world, not just in Antwerp, but throughout all of Europe. And while he did not begin under Rubens, his work he soon began to work with him. Where at his young age, he was able to absorb Rubens' ability to capture scale, drama, compositional richness, and that Baroque energy that we see in so many paintings. He combined elite polish with his precocious technical skill. So move to the next scene, next slide. This is an image of Van Dyck, a young Van Dyck that he painted when he was much younger. So as I stated previously, he ascended at an early age to a stage of great prominence. In 1617, at the age of 19, he was admitted to the Antwerp Guild of St. Luke, which was focused on artists and afforded him connections and prestige beyond that of many other artists who were many years his senior. And around that time, he came into the orbit of Peter Paul Rubens, this fine gentleman here who we've had on stream before. Van Dyck's work brought him into Rubens' workshop, where he was regarded as one of the most gifted painters there and was referred to by Rubens as the best of my pupils. And the full nature of their relationship is lost to time, but his influence is clear. And although Rubens' robust bodies gave way to Van Dyck's sharper and more elegant bodies, and which would foreshadow his future portraiture style. So between 1620 and 1621, he went to he spent a brief time in England, and this was likely as a result of George Villiers, first Duke of Buckingham, who was a notable patron of the arts at the time. And that gave him early exposure to English court culture and helped him expand his ambitions beyond the incredibly competitive art scene in Antwerp. Man. So after he came back from London to Antwerp in 1621, he traveled to Italy, where he would remain for the next 6 years, spending much of that time in Genoa. He would also travel to Florence, Rome, Bologna, Mantua, and Palermo, but not as a tourist, but as a student of the Italian style. He filled what would become to be known as his Italian notebook, which is currently at the British Museum in London, with sketches and observations that he would use for the rest of his life. So I've got a slide talking about the notebook, or a little bit talking about the notebook. So we'll move on to the next. So we're going to talk about the Italian years now. This is one of his portraits of some Italian noble children with some crows, which I thought was pretty interesting, so I threw it in here. So, like I previously mentioned, while in Italy, he studied great Italian masters, including Titian, who we've talked about, this gentleman, Veronese, Paolo Veronese,
Who we have not talked about.
Who we have not talked about, and also Tintoretto, who we have not talked about either. But they were high Renaissance Venetian or masters from Venice, and really Titian overshadowed them all, but they were all very prominent at the time. So he took note of their masterful use of color and composition, and his notebook, which, do I got it here? Nope, I didn't put the picture of the notebook in here.
The link's broken, actually.
Oh, shoot. Okay. Well, I saved the I saved the link. I saved the pictures. So there we go. So this is a page from there's a page from the notebook here. And it's like 114 pages of it's 114 pages of sketches of famous works and original works, but mostly he would find a painting that he liked, and he would find a painting he liked and then just made a sketch of it so that it would so that he could use them for reference later. And like I said, this notebook is in the British Museum now, and it's very it's a centerpiece because it's such an interesting look at it. And his notebook shows a particular fondness for their works. His time and observance gave him an expanded visual vocabulary to work with. He learned richer colors, broader elegance, and a stronger sense of how a portrait could be a stage for status rather than just a record of appearance. So Genoa was the perfect place to experiment with these newly found techniques. The city's elite wanted to appear. They wanted to appear splendid and socially untouchable, and Van Dyck's style was rapidly growing to meet those demands. Van Dyck's work was not only engaging, but his staging, based on height, poise, expensive fabrics, made him an incredibly sought after artist because people would see this portrait and go, "Holy shit, you look awesome in that." Like, you look nothing like you do. This is kind of like glamour shots at the time, right? So it's like the
Yeah, yeah.
original, the original Photoshop to make the women not look as fat, kind of thing.
Yeah, it's like airbrushing without the airbrush.
Yeah, yeah, incredibly flattering portraits. Um, so he learned that portraits can function as social architecture, not just people in fancy clothes. His works were a powerful performance of class, where the sitters are elongated, elevated, framed by columns, drapery, attendants, hunting dogs, or open sky. And his works conspired to say, this person is above ordinary humanity. And the people of Genoa just ate it up. They loved it. But beyond
Hmm,
Genoa, his time in Rome exposed him to the bishops and cardinals, which helped him further his reach into elite circles.
hmm.
So his time in Antwerp made him technically brilliant, and Italy taught him how to make power and prestige appear effortless. So, next slide. There we go. So in 1627 he returned to Antwerp, transformed by his Italian experience. No longer a young artist, but a seasoned and celebrated artist. The frequent absences of Rubens at this time, because Rubens was functioning as a diplomat, like we talked about. He was going all over the place being a
Mhm.
diplomat for the Spanish government, and that left space to come in and really take over parts of the market. So when people would normally want Rubens and he was gone, they would go to Van Dyck because Van Dyck was one of his most famous and successful students, and his work was so good. Um, and during this time, he became the court painter to Archduchess Isabella, not to be confused with the. Uh, there's a later Archduchess of Spain. This is not her. This is the original Archduchess Isabella, the sovereign of Habsburg
Mhm.
Netherlands. And then at the time, he also worked on altarpieces and many other religious works. Um, Much like Rubens, he filled that gap. So he wasn't just a portrait artist; he was an all-around, very talented artist. So in 1632, Van Dyck is called to England by Charles I, and he was appointed as the principal painter in ordinary to their Majesty, which is a mouthful. He was knighted and given a
Hmm.
healthy salary, as well as given a place in the palace to live. So he was pretty much set for life after that. Charles was in serious need of Van Dyck's help, as he himself did not project much authority in person. Van Dyck's ability to capture and project authority in his portraits helped Charles maintain the aura of legitimacy. The National Gallery of London notes that his flattering and authoritative images of Charles and the royal family set a new standard for English portraiture and became models the court wanted to imitate. So people would see the paintings of Charles, and this is the painting. Let's see. We'll go back to the painting here. This is a portrait of Charles in three poses. So this was such an amazing and detailed painting, and the style of it was so interesting that it was later used as a model to make busts. They made sculptures based on this painting because he provided so much detail in the face. He's got the right side, the left
Hmm.
side. He's got kind of the askance view, so it really allowed
Mhm.
the it allowed the sculptor to capture Charles's likeness in a very meaningful way without having to have the man sit there for a day or 2 days while he was doing that. As an aside on
That is
this,
remarkable.
it is a fantastic painting, and he does such a great job with the lace and the richness of the clothing and the courtly elements to it. So he's got the medallion, and then over here on the other side to the right, there's that like star thing, another symbol of royalty. He did a great job of making him appear very noble and stately, I would say. So he begins specialized images of the royal family, including Queen Henrietta Marie, along with her children, and to other nobles to help construct the visual identity of the Stuart dynasty. Van Dyck helped
They were
Charles.
definitely in dire need of making that happen,
Yeah,
considering what will be coming next historically with the Glorious
and
Revolution.
yeah, and it didn't last for long. So he helped Charles not to appear as a man straining for power, but as an established leader whose power had settled on him by divine habit. And so in Italy, he learned to paint aristocracy, but in England, he learned to paint monarchy, and it really elevated his portraiture to a new level. So in his final years, during the 1630s, he becomes a star in the royal court and aristocratic circles in England. Contemporary accounts note that he set up and ran a very large studio operation to keep up with demands for his talents, which of course there's so many nobles and everybody wants a piece of him. In 1640, he married Mary Ruthven, who was the lady in waiting to the queen and court. And little is known or recorded of their marriage, but other than it was suggested by Charles I, he was like, "Hey, you guys should marry her. You should marry this girl." So in his final years, Van Dyck stood at the peak of artistic success in England, installed as Charles I's principal court painter, knighted, and showered with elite commissions. He became the chief visual architect of the Stuart monarchy. Yet the pace of court life and constant production took their toll. And after marrying Mary van Ruthven later in life, his health declined. Now, I don't think that was due to his wife, but it probably didn't help. And
She
then
might
he
have just
died.
nagged him to death, and it only took years.
Yeah, she may have. Either that or who knows? Maybe she was shagging the hell out of him.
Heart gave out.
Yeah, kind of like shit. Who was the other person that we talked about that did that? One of the other artists we talked about, there was rumored that he fucked himself to death. Oh, Raphael. Yeah, it was rumored with Raphael.
Yeah, Raphael. Yes.
Yeah. So maybe we can run with that.
If you got to
narrative,
go out, that's a good way,
right? Yeah. Because she's a very attractive woman. She's a very beautiful woman. Of course, he may have touched her up a bit. Who knows? But he died in London in 1641 at the age of 42, leaving behind a portrait style that would shape British aristocratic painting for generations. And then the next year, Charles would lose the crown and be beheaded. So he really only maintained his grasp on power as long as Van Dyck was there to keep his ass going.
So in other words, when the art stopped, Charles stopped.
Yeah, pretty much. When the art stopped, Charles Charles didn't know what to do. So talk a little bit. I've got a little brief aside about Charles here prepared. Let me see if I can get to it.
Good old Cromwell is going to come into the picture.
Just to put it into perspective a little bit as soon as my page loads. So Charles was he was born in 1600. He was the second son of James the Sixth. And nobody expected him to become the king because his older brother Henry, the Prince of Wales, was charismatic. He was a charismatic heir, and he was widely admired. And then he died suddenly in 1612, and that left Charles the heir to the throne. And Charles was small and shy and physically fragile. He was not a person that projected authority. Um, and it ended up costing him. He inherited the throne in 1625, and he had a very strong belief in the divine right of kings, but that only carried him so far. As soon as he had developed a political culture in the parliament where parliament expected to have a say in taxation and government, and Charles fought with them constantly over it because he felt like the parliament was kind of usurping his bounds a little bit. And so he needed money for wars with Spain and France, but the parliament did not want to pay for it. And so he dissolved parliament repeatedly, and he eventually tried ruling without a parliament at all for 11 years. And historians often call this Charles' personal rule, his personal rule. And that experiment did not go well. He tried to enforce religious policies that many English Protestants feared were drifting towards Catholicism. His Archbishop, William Laud, pushed for reforms that angered the Puritans and the Scottish Presbyterians. Which somebody called me a Presbyterian at work today, which was kind of funny. And when Charles tried to impose Anglican-style church reforms on Scotland, it actually triggered a rebellion.
Yeah. If I remember right, in 1641 there is a Irish rebellion as well.
So yeah,
lots of chaos because of Charles.
His reign was marked by much strife, which was why he needed. It's one of the reasons why he needed Van Dyck to come in and try to propagandize the people to his power, to his greatness. And so really it's amazing how this Van Dyck worked through his portraiture, he worked as a propagandist for a failing regime. So tension spiraled into the English Civil War of 1642, where the royalists who supported the king and parliamentarians opposing him clashed, and this is where Oliver Cromwell comes into play. After years of fighting, Charles lost. So I have my timeline wrong on Charles being beheaded. It was in 1649. Parliament put the king on trial for treason against his own people, and the court declared him guilty, and he was executed by beheading on January 30th, in 1649, outside the banqueting house in London. So this was revolutionary at the time because reigning monarchs didn't often get beheaded in this way. So
I think that may have been one of the earliest incidents of that in what would be considered kind of semi-modern history.
Yeah.
And that's a remarkable event.
Because it really did break the lineage of the divine right of kings in a way. You know, the ancient aristocracy was put to an end with the beheading of Charles, and a new one eventually took over, of course, but it wasn't the same. And it really ushered in the power of more parliamentarian government. So,
well, which ironic with Cromwell, who's one of my favorite villains in English and American history, basically styled himself as a king without a crown, is how I would simplify the explanation.
Yeah, and that echoes a lot to many modern politicians today. I would say. Um, Many of our congressmen believe themselves to be untouchable, um, in the same way, you know, like we hear them talk about it.
Hmm.
And not to get too political on the show, because that's not what we're here to talk about necessarily, but there are some powerful echoes to um, how the English Civil War went to what we're living through today, with some of the overreach of the parliamentarians in a way. So, with that, we'll just go ahead and jump into the first work. So this, now the painting, the image in the thumbnail, I have to apologize. The image in the thumbnail is done by Van Dyck, but it is done by a different Van Dyck. Not Anthony van Dyck. It was done by a Van Dyck from a little bit later. So when I Googled Van Dyck and Judith, that's the picture that came up. And then I started digging into it when I was writing the presentation. And I was like, ah, shit, well, that's a different Van Dyck. Anyhow, this one is supposedly done by Van Dyck. This is Judith with the head of Holofernes. As we've seen, I think we've covered like 5, maybe 6 different versions of this. Actually, probably more than that. And God help it,
Probably.
I'll keep putting these fuckers in here as
I
long as
just
I
want to
can.
make sure. Yeah, as long as like there's some, like every other episode, there's something to do with Judith and Holofernes, I'll be a happy man.
Yeah. And I love it because then I don't have to keep explaining the story of Judith and Holofernes, and neither do you.
Exactly.
Because, yeah, because anybody listening should be well acquainted with it by now. So this was painted in 1632. It's an oil on canvas measuring 44 by 37 inches or 112 by 94 centimeters. And it's oil on canvas on a canvas, oil on panel canvas. This was commissioned by Kenelm Digby as part of a series of religious works. That's where it's been traced to. And of course, this image, painted in 1632, would have come later, but it would have come far after Caravaggio, or not far after, but after Caravaggio's influence had kind of shattered the Baroque realm and barged in and spread its influence everywhere. So this one shows some very good use of the Caravaggisti influence. Abra she's there, she's faintly shaded in the background. But the focal point is Judith in a pretty elegant pose, especially with her hand on the sword. She looks very authoritative. And then the familiar depiction of breast out depiction is done kind of a more tasteful fashion to show a little more modesty. And not to say that like Rubens' portrayal was immodest, but this is a hallmark of Van Dyck's work, is that he portrayed people in a very modest and soft fashion, in a way that was very flattering to them without being, ostentatious. And and I think this reflects that really well. The head of Holofernes, looks up at her while she looks out at us. Um, he's pleading with with his assailant while she's uh, not soliciting us, but is, she's looking at the viewer with kind of a serene and a somewhat serene but slightly contentious look, which would fit with what she's
It's
just done.
very much of a challenging look of kind of okay, I did this, what are you going to do about it?
Yeah, very much, very much. And the cloth element in it is of course very well done. The robe, which could be a blanket, whatever, draped over her. And then of course, I'm sure this painting was much brighter when it was originally done. This the like I said, the provenance of this painting is not 100% secured. People do believe it to be Van Dyck's work, although he did not. There's no signature of his on there. So the image is, there's no blood. I mean, there's a little bit of red below by the base of the neck, but there's not like blood everywhere. It's just not as visceral as say, Gentileschi's portrayal, or even or anybody else's portrayal. Most of the even
It's almost sanitized by comparison.
yeah, very much so. And Judith does appear very stately, uh, and the daring look that she's giving you, the challenging look that she's giving you, um, along with her soft features, does command a very, I think, stern air of authority. So, like I said, there's no signature, and this painting is attributed to Van Dyck through scholarly means. People who have studied his work and studied art history have come to the conclusion that this was his, and it was a part of that Digby series of works. But yeah, so here's Judith and Holofernes, and I personally love this painting. It might be one of my favorite depictions of Judith, just because of how kind of stately she does look, and how authoritative she does
Mhm.
look um, without seeming shitty. You know,
Yeah. Yeah,
she
she doesn't look gleeful, she doesn't look kind of, full of the joy of murder in that particular moment. It's very much of a, "I did this, and what are you going to do about it?"
yes, she looks very authoritative. So with that one, um, we'll jump over to the Genoese noblewoman. So this was painted earlier than that one. This was painted in between 1622 and 1627, while he was in Genoa. This is an oil on canvas, and it measures 40 and 3/4 inches by 34 inches, or 102.6 centimeters by 86.4 centimeters. And it's currently housed in the Frick collection in New York. And of course, this was painted during his Italian years, and it depicts a Genoese noblewoman. Although it's unknown specifically who she is, although she's thought to belong to the Balbi family, who were wealthy nobles at the time. And I think the painting reflects the desire of the wealthy aristocracy at the time, eager to present themselves with grandeur and poise and cultivated magnificence, which of course, I believe this does. This is um, it's a very magnificent portrayal of a woman. Um, Her gown is amazingly detailed. The soft cloth bunched in her hand captures the light in a really great and interesting way. The
And the cuffs and collars are amazingly detailed.
Yeah, yeah, it's got to be such a tedious thing to paint. Is those weird ruffly cuffs and collars that these fucking people loved back then? Like, they loved lace, they loved frilly shit. You know, I and those weird collars like that have to. God damn, they must have been so uncomfortable. Um, but I guess that's kind of the way that
It's
it's the what you
if you could
do.
afford that kind of collar, it's like, "Yes, I will be uncomfortable because I'm better than you." It's like,
Yeah,
"Okay."
yeah, pretty much. The detail in the gown is fantastic. The gold filigree on the trailing end of it. Um, it must have taken, like, I think you see it between 1622 and 1627. I could see this painting taking quite a long time because of the detail in it. And he wasn't necessarily known as an incredibly, like, fast artist, although he was prolific. But
Mhm.
the detail in this cloth is just astounding to me, because it looks good. It looks real. It doesn't look distorted, and it doesn't look like rushed. It looks like he took the time to make sure this dress looked as stunning and detailed as he possibly could. The
I would venture to say it's even almost bordering on kind of a photorealistic for the time, yeah, as close as you can for
Yeah,
that time and that type of art. Just to see like the little details where there's irregularities and the gold trim on this is just amazing.
yeah. And in light of that, the photorealism, it puts a very fine point on the difference between the Mannerist style and the realist Baroque style. Where the Mannerist style did that uh, kind of stylized version of people. It didn't make
Hmm.
everybody look exactly like they looked. It made them look a little weird and elongated. Um, the depth of field on the paintings was kind of in question sometimes. Because a lot of those paintings existed on a flat plane instead of being in a three-dimensional space, and this one definitely is a three-dimensional space. And the I think the drape in the background it really does help accentuate the patron in her lavish gold and white gown, and the way that it is draped over the chair gives the painting a bit of an amount of depth that we didn't see in almost any of Pontormo's work. So the and
Hmm.
in light of something like this, I can see why the nobles would want him to paint their picture. Um, because it is almost photorealistic, like you said, and it not only captures, the image of the person, but uh, the spirit of the luxury, um, and the grandness of the wealthy aristocracy, or how they felt about themselves at the time. Mm.
The only thing that does jump out at me is kind of an oddity is the back of the chair. It almost doesn't look like it's attached properly. That's,
Yeah,
that's interesting.
yeah, I can see that, and I think that's because of the drape is the way the drape is on there, and there is a little bit of
Hmm.
weirdness in the perspective there. He trimmed up the perspective a little bit right there, but it still does have a very three-dimensional feel to it.
Oh yeah, yeah. I mean, it's just like that one weird detail, and I think just because the line of the seat front doesn't match the back,
Yeah,
that
there
that's
is a
that's the
little,
only thing that clued me off,
you
and
know.
it doesn't detract from it at all. It's just kind of a neat little like, moment where it's like, wow, one of the great masters still screwed up a little bit. That's great.
And you know what'd be hilarious if you're like, oh, that chair's a little messed up, and then you see the chair and it turns out it was just shitty craftsmanship, and the chair the chair really does look all fucked
It
up
was
in
the
real
chair
life.
itself. Yeah.
Like, they're like, that reminds me. So one of the paintings I did of it was a man and a woman holding hands, and the angle of the hand, the woman's hand, uh it made it look a little well, to me it looks totally normal. But uh to my mom and my sister, they were looking at it and they're like, "Where's her knuckles?" I was like, "It's fucking perspective." Like there's nothing wrong with that picture. You're just not seeing it in the correct perspective. Um and so when my mom brought it up, I was like, "It's a silhouette of real hands. I didn't make it up," cuz she thought that I'd done it weird. Like, I didn't make it up. It's real
Mhm.
fucking people's hands. It's not it's just a silhouette of them. Like, just cuz it looks a little weird to you doesn't mean the perspective is completely off. But anyhow, that's neither here nor there. Let's move on to the next family, the Lomellini family. The next painting. This was painted between 1626 and 1627. It's oil on canvas, and this one's pretty big. It's 106 by 100 inches or 269 by 254 centimeters. This is currently housed in the Scottish National Gallery in Edinburgh. Painted for the Lomellini family, specifically Giacomo Lomellini, who served as the Doge of Genoa from 1520 or 1625 to 1627. And this was believed to be one of his most ambitious paintings of his Genoese period because it's
Hmm.
huge. It's a giant painting, and it captures not just a few people, but an entire family. So Giacomo is actually not in the painting because the laws at the time um, prevented a sitting doge from being depicted as in a painting because it was seen as self promotion, and that was not allowed in the royalty at the time. So
Huh.
instead, this painting shows his family, um, his wife and his children, and the family is portrayed that it and really is stately and regal. The eldest son here he's in traditional gear with he's got his sword and he's got a musket. Of course, during this time there was this was after the Papal Wars, but they were still fighting the Turks. So
Actually,
he,
that's a broken staff, not a musket,
mm,
which has all
oh
sorts of questions
oh
about
yeah, it
them.
does.
What was it, like a banner or?
It could be. I didn't zoom in on it enough to see. Um, yeah, it could very much be a banner that signifies something greater, like the uh, the breaking of the breaking of some rule, or the he could be holding the staff to show the defeat of somebody too. Um,
Hmm.
but they're all very
Now, I'm
stately.
I'm I'm all sorts of curious. I know what I'll be doing afterwards.
Yeah. You'll have to. And yeah, I didn't do as much research into this painting as I should. I was in a bit of a hurry. So one thing that I really like about this painting is the little dog at the bottom. So we'll see a dog in another one of the paintings we're going to look at, but he often put dogs and stuff like that in paintings just to show um, kind of to show status in a way. Like pets weren't something everybody had, especially not little toy pets like this. But then dogs in paintings also symbolize loyalty in a lot of ways, and that could very much be why he included the dog as well. The
Hmm.
wife in the middle she looks somewhat bellicose, but I love that the slight expression on her face where she's engaging the viewer. She's the only person in the painting who's engaging the viewer directly. Everyone else is
Hmm.
kind of looking off. Even the son here, the oldest son with the Van Dyke goatee and mustache. Um, is almost looking past the viewer, not directly at the viewer. And of course, the kids aren't paying any attention at all.
Hmm.
And the collar that the mother is wearing is so amazingly detailed. It looks so fine and delicate. He did such an amazing job of capturing um, the fluffiness of that. Like it doesn't look like that one would be uh, super uncomfortable because it doesn't look that heavy. I'm sure it's not awesome to
Hmm.
wear that shit, but it's probably got to be 10 times worse if you got something that's really heavy. And same with the
Oh yeah.
ruffles on the sleeves too. They're very they're very soft um and incredibly detailed. The children's clothes are also extremely well done. Um the cloth again looks real. Um and that's why I say he painted silk and softness so well. Um and you know, we gushed over Orazio Gentileschi's ability to capture cloth and the ability to capture the light on
Hmm.
cloth, and I think his is even better. It The cloth just looks soft and fluffy. It looks very smooth and sheen, and it has a good sheen to it. Very clean clothes, which I'm sure were not super common at this time. And then the lace ruffles on the collars are also something that's really interesting to me, because the oldest son has a lace ruffle on his armor.
So,
It's
an
like,
interesting thing, an acquaintance of mine is a he works as a curator for museums, but he specifically works with clothing, and they use this level of detail from artists like Van Dyck to recreate the clothing, because the
yeah,
attention to detail by artists, especially Van Dyck, is that good. So they could
yeah, and
actually get it down to the right embroidery, lace embroidery on buttons and things of that nature.
that's that's fantastic. Um, and it makes perfect sense, you know. And of course, this painting also has other kind of stylistic choices. There's the columns that the family is set against, and then the drapery in the background. So it sets a very regal background too. And then the open sky here over the window gives the sun a much more, makes him seem taller and larger than he may have been in real life. A very flattering image of his family. And I think, a very wonderful tribute that a man could give to his family. To Even though the kids probably didn't appreciate it, because the little boy doesn't look super happy to be there. He's probably afraid of getting his ass beat.
I mean, I wouldn't be either. It's like, you gotta paint me now, really?
Yeah. So, along with the dog theme, we're going to jump over to the next one, which is this is James Stewart, Duke of Richmond and Lennox. So, this was painted in 1633, between 1633 and 1635, while Van Dyck was at the English court. This is oil on canvas. It is 85 by 50 and a quarter inches, or 216 by 127 centimeters. And this is currently located in the Metropolitan Museum of Art in New York. Not the MoMA, just the Metropolitan Museum of Art, not the modern art shit. James Stewart was one of the most prominent noblemen of Charles I's court. He was the king's cousin, and he held the title of Duke of Richmond and Lennox, as stated in the title of the painting. And, and this was painted for the courts during his time as a royal painter. And it features the Duke in a noble pose with his loyal hunting dog looking up at him lovingly, which I think is a fantastic touch. My dog's looked at me like that before. I love my dog. And, we all know. We've all had dogs. They've seen how they look at you with love. And I think this dog has a really great, loving look on its face for his master.
Mm-hmm.
Stewart is wearing the Star of Garter, and the image
Yeah,
is
the Order of the Garter.
Yep, the Order of the Garter. So the entire image is saturated with the markers of privilege and fashion and status. Of course, the silk stockings and the ruffled boots were a big thing at the time. And his pose is not it's not as stiff, because of the way he has his knee kind of cocked and he's resting with his hand on his hip. He does appear more graceful and relaxed, and less as, compare this to the noble woman, where um, she does appear kind of relaxed,
Just
but she is
very
very
rigid, yeah.
stiff. Yeah, she's very stiff, and this guy doesn't look near as stiff. Um, and it does, he has this golden hair that trails down over his collar, which is often called the lock of love. Um, and this was another one of those paintings that went to mythologize the Stuart dynasty and help to um, assert the authority of King Charles and his court. as stately figures, as figures of aristocratic wealth and respect and prestige. So let's see, zoom in a little bit here. And again, the lace collars, just phenomenal. Um, the amount of time it must take to paint something like that and to capture it in good detail, um, the dedication of it is just amazing to me. The look on the dog's face again, like I say, the dog is looking up at him very lovingly, um, which is touching to me. You know, as a pet owner, as a person who likes dogs, um, I think that the adoration shown by the dog is very telling towards him as a person, towards his gentleness, but his respectability in a way.
So something else that just is fascinating to me, and it's great to see the detail with the stockings. They're not perfectly, smooth and fitted. They're
Hmm.
imperfect.
Yeah,
They've got that little bit of a sag that cloth gets. That's
yeah,
such a fine attention to detail.
it's yeah, and it would be so much easier for him to paint those stockings as, you know, smooth and tight. Um, and it's such a great artistic choice to give them the ridges and make them have more texture to them. So we're running up on time, so we'll look at the last painting here. And this is the only painting of Charles, even though he painted so many fucking portraits of Charles. Um, the original analysis I was running through to look at this, I'm like, what are some of his most famous paintings? And it's like 20 paintings of Charles came up. And so and so I decided on this one and then the three poses because the three poses is so well done. So again, this is Charles the First. This was painted in the painting is called Charles the First at the Hunt. It's painted in 1635. This is oil on canvas, and it is fucking humongous. It's 8 feet 11 inches by 6 foot 11 inches, so almost 9 by 7, or 266 by 207 centimeters. And this painting is currently located in the Louvre. Um, Charles is portrayed at the hunt besides his horse. And this is meant not to show him as an armored king, but as a relaxed nobleman commanding the hunt. His pose shows a balance between gentlemanly nonchalance and regal assurance. And so, again, while we talked about earlier, Charles in real life was a very slight man, a very skinny man that did not portray authority. Van Dyck stages him to appear commanding uh, in this way. The low viewpoint of his pose against the open sky makes him appear much taller than what he really was, much larger. The light tones of his clothes also help to make him stand out against the background, which then again appears to make him more larger and commanding than he really was. The servant and the horse are used as a scale and status device to further help lend presence to the subject because they're much shorter and smaller in the background. Um, and then the horse with its head bowed also showing deference to him. The
Mhm.
view behind Charles it helps give a sense of breadth and dominion, and it pulls the viewer's gaze outward over the wider landscape. Um, and Charles in this is not drowning in the regalia of royalty. He's not wearing a crown or the robe or anything like that. It's making him look as though kingship is kind of effortless and really does fit him. And you know, this work, uh, this work was contrasted in Charles' real life struggles to maintain authority. Van Dyck's work is a propaganda piece that is attempting to help the king maintain relevance. But again, he would be beheaded in 1649, like we talked about previously, which was like 13 years later. So a little over a decade after this picture was painted of him being like this incredibly regal and commanding character, um, he caught the friggin' he caught the
The
blade in front of
blade of time.
he lost his head. So a few things we'll look at as we're wrapping up here. Um, get this to zoom in. Ooh. Oh, zoom it out a little bit and then zoom back in. There we go. So again, he has Charles with that pearl earring, which is a sign of opulence, and then the silk collar, or the lace collar, and then the silk of his clothes, of his white shirt, um, really captures the light in a fascinating way, and kind of draws you in to make you like it draws a lot of attention in the work. And the lines, specifically from the gold, draw you upwards towards Charles' face, and then the hat caps it off. So the whole painting really is designed to draw you towards that aristocratic and nonchalant look from Charles, where he is not appearing desperate to fight power. He's trying to maintain that air of authority, or he's not even trying. He just has that air of authority in this image. And let's see. And we're at our hour now. So I think that's about all we got. We can wrap up here.
Yeah. Just kind of an interesting observation. And I know he's done some, Van Dyck has done some other works with more outdoors scenes,
Mm-hmm.
but it's kind of nice to see his attention to detail goes to plants as well.
Yeah, absolutely. The plants down in the left, the in the left corner, and then in the trees. The trees have a lot of great detail in them.
Mm-hmm.
And then the trees in the background as well, behind Charles. They do give it a really good sense of depth and scale. And so, yeah, that's been Anthony van Dyck, and as Bleach so generously mentioned, he did do a lot of outdoor scenes. He did do a lot of really great work. We've only scratched the bare surface of this guy's work here today. So I would encourage everyone listening, if you like his paintings, definitely go look up more of his work, because it's definitely it's something that will enlighten you. Not to sound like gay, but it's something that I think will
That's
enrich
what we're
you. It
finding
can
here.
help, yeah, it can enrich you in a very personal way, and give you great insights into the people of the time. And again, these are our people. This is our history, and it's well worth remembering. So with that, thanks for coming along, Bleach. I really do appreciate you putting up with me being a slacker on this one. And
Well, yeah, I've been out too, so
yeah,
we're in this together.
life happens. Next week we are going to be talking about a Dutch. We are going to be talking about another Dutch painter. Let me get to my list. We are going to be talking about Hendrik ter Brueggen, who was a Dutch Caravaggisti, and came a little bit before Van Dyck, but he was a devout student of Caravaggio's style, so I felt like he would be great to include here. But that will be next week, and yeah, thank you all for coming out, folks.
Go out and look at some art, actually. Much more interesting than you'd think.
Yep, and more.
See you next week.
See you next week, folks.